Welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, the Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sanko for the second, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. If you are not listening to Wes and Blake Silverman over on the Pin Down on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel, you absolutely should be. Obviously, reading our guy O2 over on the Detroit Free Press and my Motor City Hoops Substack, where you can subscribe for free. A lot of great content coming from all of those places, all off season long, but really now, as we are simply a month away, O2, from real NBA basketball coming back. But you, my friend, have been off season O. So if you guys haven't been around the last couple of weeks, we had some fun episode. I interviewed my old coach, Jeff Jones. We had Slam and Jam to talk about the Western Conference. But as we near 200 episodes for the Pistons Pulse, O2 is back from a much-deserved vacation.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys for holding down the fort in my absence. I would like the people to know that I didn't do anything of note during my 2-week break. I mostly just played a lot of college football. I did see some friends like for a weekend in upstate New York and like a cabin type deal, so that was cool. But beyond that, I've just been chilling. Like off season, it's just been riding this bike and playing video games, and now he's back. So exciting, man. I'm excited to be back. It's like I was just saying before we started, it's like when a player misses like 2 weeks of action and, you know, and then they might shoot 5 for 14 when they come back. Like I'm trying to avoid a 5 for 14 performance in this episode. So we'll see.
What? Literally no vacation stories, no fun adventure, eating. Like you didn't go on, like even Wes did a triathlon while you were gone. Like you got nothing to top that.
I kicked it with friends. I kicked it with family. Beyond that, like nothing crazy. I usually try to go on a trip like every year. Like last year I went to San Diego. The year before that I did Montreal. This year, like I want to stay home. Like I don't want to do anything. You know, like I don't know what it was. Like maybe the season going like a month longer. I was just like, I'm just good on travel for a little bit. And Detroit's a good place to be in the summer. So like I didn't get FOMO or anything. I was pretty happy.
All right, I can live with it. Who did you build a dynasty out with on college football?
I mostly just do head to head. I'm a head to head guy. Like I get bored playing the computer. Like I like the adrenaline rush and dopamine hit of like beating actual people. And I just hit Heisman. Like I'm an ultimate team guy. Like I don't spend any money though. Like they have all these ways to monetize it. I'm not going to go off on too much of a tangent, but there are people who just spend all their money on cards and I still beat them. So that's what I did. And it feels good. Wes asked me in the chat, is it worth the price? Probably. Like I've already got my money's worth. So I'll just go ahead and say, yeah, it's worth the price. And I like college football a lot more than Madden too. So
did you play any other games? So was there any Madden 2K from earlier this year, anything like that? Or were you pretty much college
Madden, just so I could play a couple buddies of mine, and it's the first Madden I've gotten in like a long time. But you know, I also played a little bit of Death Stranding too. We don't have to get into that. I don't even know how
I don't know what you just said.
I don't even know how I would describe that one to you. But if you know, you know. But no, it's mostly for college football.
Very good. I know we got the Lions starting this Sunday. NFL starts up. College football has started up, a big weekend. But like I said, we're truly a month away from the NBA season. We have started an annual tradition here at the Pistons Pulse of doing a stats prediction for not every player on the roster. I think today we'll really get into the 9 guys that we believe will be consistent rotation players when healthy. Obviously, the Malik Beasley thing is out there. As O2 said, if they end up signing Malik Beasley, or maybe Wes said it, we will have a reaction episode and we will hash all of these things out. But as of right now, he is not. So we are going to look at Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Ausar Thompson, Tobias Harris, Jalen Duren, Karis LeVert, Duncan Robinson, Ron Holland, and Isaiah Stewart, with a little bit of talk about Chaz Lanier and Javonte Green. So if you have not done this before, Omari and I will each give our stats predictions for the player. Wes will then average those. Wes, if he has his, he can add his predictions into that average as well. And then he will give us what we call the Pistons Pulse stats predictions for each player. Some guys, we do points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, percentage, like all of it. Some guys, you know, I'll be honest, like Duncan Robinson, I think I only did points and maybe something to do with threes. So we'll see how it goes. But O2, are you ready to do this? Go ahead and make our stats predictions for the 25-26 Detroit Pistons.
Cool. Let's go ahead and lead off with Cade Cunningham, right? That's probably the big name that people are
We're actually going to go reverse.
Oh, we're going
Wes
reverse. From bottom to the top. Okay.
Wes wants us to keep those known commodities like Cade Cunningham for the end. We're actually going to start with the vets, O2. So Maurice asked, is this live or recorded? No, we are live, guys. O2 is off his off season. I'm around. Some people that watch Game Theory, we've been doing recorded live, like we record and then play it as a live, but that's because Sam is on vacation. We are 100% live. So if you're here watching live, drop your stats predictions in the chat as well. So we're going to start actually with Tobias Harris, O2. We're going to start with the vets. And this one's interesting because this is probably going to be my biggest drop in production for the Detroit Pistons from last year. So pulling up Tobias Harris's numbers last season for Detroit in the regular season. Of course, this is a regular season prediction. Averaged 13.7 on 48, 35, 86, just under 6 rebounds, just over 2 assists, a steal, a little bit under a block in almost 32 minutes a night. O2. My stats prediction for Tobias Harris is down to 10 points per game, 1.5 assists, 5 rebounds on 48, 36. And my thing here is, I think this is the obvious usage goes down, minutes go down, points per game go down, as these numbers had to drop for somebody. Me, you, and Wes talked about this earlier today. And if I think Ron Holland's going to score more, Ausar's going to score more, Jaden Ivey's going to score more, somebody has to take less usage. And for me, that guy ended up being Tobias Harris.
So I also have a dip for Tobias Harris, not quite as dramatic as yours, but same line of thinking as far as like the shots have to be taken away from someone, right? And there are a lot of shots cleared out, obviously, by Malik Beasley, but Simone Fontecchio had a consistent role all season too. And there's, and there's some shot attempts vacated by him too, some of which I'm sure will go to Ron, but he still has to kind of pull downward. And for Tobias, I had 12 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.5 stocks, like 46, 36 overall. Pretty similar to last season. It's just more so to me, not necessarily a production decrease, but just fewer minutes. I think he averaged like 31 and 32 last season, and I could see that being trimmed to like 28 or so. And like maybe with that, the shot profile changes a little bit, although like I just feel like he'll probably just bring too much from a spacing standpoint, especially at the 4 to, be phased out too much. But like I can see them trimming his minutes down a little bit. So
that's what I thought about today. And to be honest, like I had him at 12. So I know Maurice, said, wow, I don't think he's calling me out. He's just saying, I think Maurice was surprised that my numbers were that low. I just didn't know who else to take points per game from. And I did start thinking about it a little bit, O2, because I'm like, well, he's going to get a lot of good looks, right? Like he should get a lot of good looks. I just wonder at what point on the floor is he, like what option is he in the starting lineup, O2? You know what I mean? Like Cade is number 1, J.I. was number 2. Are they going to put more of an emphasis on getting Tobias shots than they will Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson? Maybe, but I don't think he's going to be involved in as many actions as those guys because they're going to be playing 2-man games with Cade all the time. And then in a second unit, you're either staggering J.I. to the second unit or it's Karras, or again, I think a lot of this comes down to a Ron Holland taking a step forward, and we'll get to him later in the episode. So I don't love this, and this isn't an indictment of Tobias as much as if other guys progress and take step forward, I think this will be the natural organic progression in terms of what his role is going to be.
Yeah, I still think he probably ends up being a pretty heavy fourth quarter minute guy. Just with them still being a tad younger. And like, I think they like what Tobias brings. I mean, we saw what he, brought in the playoffs just from a stability and playmaking standpoint in those moments, especially as, I think his shot picked up a bit as last season went on. So I guess that's what's curious for me is if he still ends up being a guy who's closing games, then he's still probably generating close to the shot attempts he got last season. So, it's tough to say exactly, the extent that will be cut back, but I still think Tobias probably still has a little too his juice as a scorer, especially as an outside floor spacer, for them to trim too much more than, maybe 3 or 4 minutes fewer than last season.
I think what would be interesting is I think it comes down to his 3-point percentage a lot. I think a lot of his attempts are going to be threes. I don't think we're getting a lot of ISO Tobias Harris, assuming health, right? Like we're assuming these 9 guys stay healthy. In the playoffs, he averaged 16 a game. He was the second leading scorer in the playoffs, and he shot 44% from 3. So listen, I don't love this. I just had to trim points somewhere, and I struggled to go anywhere other than Tobias. Our Pistons Pulse stat line average from all 3 of us lands Tobias at 10.7 points, 5 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 1.5 stocks.
And West had about 10 points per game.
Yeah, is it? And Marie says, I just expect more from a starting power forward. I don't disagree. It's just like, again, I think if you're going to prioritize Ausar, Ron, J.I., etc., I think he's the guy that the usage is going to go down. And I think eventually my hope is Tobias just gets signed to a few more years and he does transition into the backup 4 and they find that starting 4, whether it's Ausar, Ron, or somebody like that. So let's talk the new guys. And we're going to start with Caris LeVert. Obviously not on the Detroit Pistons last year. He split his time between the Cavs and the Hawks. Combined with those 2 teams in 64 games, he averaged 12 points in 25 minutes on 47, 37, 71, 3 rebounds, 3.5 assists, low turnovers, didn't hit a steal or block per game. My stats prediction for Caris LeVert 02, 10 points per game, 3.5 assists, 3 rebounds on 44-35 from the field. So that's a touch below his career average in terms of points. I'm not sure what the minute load ends up looking like. Could be bigger numbers if they actually only play this 9-man lineup. Where do you end up on Caris LeVert?
Okay, so I'm actually a little bit higher on Caris as a scorer. And looking at my numbers now, I feel like I kind of cheated a little bit because I really have a lot of guys averaging within a couple points of each other, which we'll talk about it.
I have some of the same, to be honest with you, Omari.
And I think that's how it could end up breaking down. But I have Caris at 12 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, 44 overall, and then 36% from 3. And I just think he's so much of a Swiss Army knife, especially a guy that's 6'6", 6'7", that can play in any lineup. I could see him being a guy who, could potentially close some games for you as well, especially if he has the hot hand going. I think he'll handle a lot of secondary playmaking, depending on how much they put J.I. on ball versus off. A lot of that comes down to his shooting as well, because if J.I. is going to shoot 41% from 3, then, maybe you do want to put the ball in Caris's hands and, take J.I. off a little bit more. But I just see his role being really important to the team. And just because he's a scorer, I could see him cracking double digits and being around the same points per game as Tobias, even though he'll probably come off the bench, obviously.
Yeah, no, I think he's going to play a huge role for this team. I could see him scoring more if there are any injuries or if a Jaden Ivey doesn't end up being the scorer that I think he needs to show to be this year, or Holland doesn't take a step forward or something like that. Our Pistons Pulse stat line prediction lands him at 11 points per game, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. West had him at 11, so we split the difference there between that. I think 3 rebounds, 3 assists seems about reasonable for Caris LeVert. Not going to be a whole lot of rebounds to go around, as we'll talk throughout the episode. I think the assists, I think kind of what he is as a playmaker is interesting to me, O2, right? Because we all know what Cade Cunningham is. What I'm fascinated is who kind of takes the lead in terms of playmaking when Cade Cunningham's off the floor. Is it J.I.? Is it Caris LeVert? Is it Ausar? Is it Ron Holland? Is it truly a combination of all of those guys in some capacity? I think that's one of the biggest things I'm interested to see, is who is kind of that primary creator, initiator, playmaker when Cade is off the floor this year. I think there's an argument to be made that Caris does quite a bit of that.
Yeah, and that will be something to watch. We talked to Trajan about it in July, and he basically said J.I. is kind of their quote unquote big free agent signing, and he'll handle a lot of that backup point guard duty, obviously with Dennis Schroeder now in Sacramento, and that's the role J.I. was in before the injury, obviously. And he's shown that he can produce at that level, but I still view him more as like combo guard than like a guy that you want pounding the ball every single possession. And I don't mean that in a negative sense at all. I just think if you have Karis LeVert, who's proven who could be that type of playmaker, then, they should probably split those on ball minutes. To me, if Cade's sitting down the middle, you could take J.I. off ball a little bit more, let him get some open shots, maybe create some easier looks at the rim. Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits to leaning on Karis, like as much as they can as far as that.
Pistons fan says, great show. Are they taking questions today? If you put a question in the chat, I'll star it. We'll see if we can get to it later on. I saw we had one that maybe when we talk about JI, maybe if you put one about a specific player, maybe we can get to it whenever we talk about said player. But we're going to finish off here with the vets with another edition of Duncan Robinson from the Miami Heat. Obviously, just like with Karis LeVert, a lot of Michigan, Detroit fans familiar with these guys. Duncan Robinson last year in 74 games averaged 11 points on 44, 39, 89. 2.5 assists, just over 2 rebounds. I'll be honest, I didn't even put those things on mine. All I put was points per game, and I have Duncan Robinson at 9 points per game. This was another guy where I wanted to be a little bit higher, but once I started adding up all the numbers with where I have a couple other guys, it was hard to get him to 10 or 12 points a game. So I'm going to end up with Duncan Robinson at 9 points per game. And I think we see him take 7+ threes a game, though, even in the minutes he gets.
So I have Duncan Robinson at 12 points per game. And like you, I didn't really bother with the other numbers because, like he's going to be out there shooting threes. A part of that is just because Malik Beasley averaged 16 a game last season. And I think Duncan Robinson is within the same caliber of shooter. I don't know if he has quite Malik Beasley's shot volume, but you look at the shots being vacated by Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr., and you probably want Duncan Robinson absorbing as many of those shots as possible. And even if he comes off the bench, like that's just a lot of shot attempts you have to replace. I think Duncan probably gets a big percentage of those. And because of that, I think he probably ends up cracking double digits in scoring. I think actually initially had him at like 13 or 14. And, you have to go back and add the numbers and make sure you don't have them at like some outrageous points per game as a team. So I ended up dialing it down a bit. But I could see Duncan being like sneaky high in points per game with the team overall, just because there's just so many threes they got to replace. And I don't know who else you would want taking those threes other than Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, my thing with him was what I realized as I was going through this, how important he is to this team. I know some people are like nervous, like is he a guy that can actually replace Malik Beasley's production and all of that? And it's like, I mean, my thing is, what if he doesn't? Like, how nervous would you be as a Pistons fan if I told you, hey, Duncan Robinson's going to miss the first 2 months of the season with a severely sprained ankle or something like that, right? I mean, he is just vitally important to this team in terms of the floor spacing, because you take him out and then all of a sudden they're like, J.I. had really good 3-point percentage last year, and LeVert can make shots and Harris can make shots, but you don't have that guy that just like, this is what he does. This is his elite skill. Or even the Tim Hardaway Jr., which he was at least high volume, even if it was a little bit up and down. So the Pistons Pulse line is 10.3 points per game. Wes had him at 10 points per game. So we're all kind of here. I'm interested to see some of yours, because I feel like you have come in higher on these veteran players. So I'm kind of interested to see where we differ then as we get down the road to some more of the younger players and where they land. Real quick, I don't know that we're going to get into the specific numbers, but let's start with Chaz Lanier. Let's just go. What do you think minutes played? Could be total per game, games played. What are you thinking for Chaz Lanier?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, he's probably a guy that sees minutes in garbage time, or if there's any injury, you give him a shot. But they have depth on the wing. He's a guy like at 6'4" who's going to be playing a lot of like off guard, probably more of a pure 2 or 3. And he's competing with minutes for just a lot of guys in that range. So I would be surprised if he had a significant role early on. He'd have to be killing it in camp or something else happen rotation wise to clear some minutes for him.
Yeah, and I think that goes for Javonte Green as well. I did a video breakdown on Javonte Green over on the Substack. If you guys want to check it out, thank you for everybody that's supporting me over there. I think I'm up over like 1,250 subscribers. A lot of those things have gotten over 1,000 views, whether it's the written written or the video. But I think I'm with you, O2. To me, if I'm JB Bickerstaff right now, I'm looking at my team and I'm planning on a consistent 9-man rotation. And then I'm playing the hot hand either as the 10th man or the sub that I need, whether that's Sasser, Lanier, Javonte Green, Paul Reed, Bobby Klintman. I know there's one more roster spot available eventually. You even have the two-way guys that have been interesting, especially Dennis Jenkins. So that's how I envision this right now. So with you, I don't foresee a consistent role for Chaz Lanier or Javonte Green right now to start the season in terms of the rotation. So I think it's just, hey, somebody's injured tonight, somebody's not playing, foul trouble, something like that. Then those guys get minutes. We are going to get into the young guys that I think are going to be the most fun part of this conversation. That is Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey, and Ausar Thompson. We'll get into those three right after this.
All right, we are back with segment 2, and we're going to get into the young guys here. It sounds like we're going to lead off with Jalen Duren. This should be fun. Bryce, I'll let you lead off with your Jalen Duren prediction.
So Jalen Duren last year, just under 12 points on just under 70% from the field, a guy that understands his role. Free throw percentage went down from the year before, something that was talked about all year. Over 10 rebounds, just under 3 assists, 0.7 steals, 1.1 block, 1.7 turnovers. My projection for Jalen Duren this year isn't a huge jump in the box score numbers, but I went with 12 points, 3 assists, 11 rebound, and 2.5 stocks. My big questions, I think this is what will be fun to talk about, is does he play more minutes? Last year, he played 26 minutes a game. Is this a guy that's going to get more? I think it's hard to average more than, 12, right around those double digit numbers if you're only playing 26 minutes a night. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it speaks to a guy we'll talk about later in the episode and the depth at the position. I'm just not sure you can put up box score numbers that are significantly better than that unless the minutes are really going to take a huge jump. And so that's where I stayed relatively close to the same that he averaged last year. And really for me, it's all about how much does the defense continue to improve and be consistent, especially compared to what we saw at the end of last season and into the playoffs.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all of that. And I think I had the exact same numbers for Jalen Duren, or pretty close to it. And it's also pretty similar to what he averaged last season. 12 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, and around 2.5 blocks and steals per game. I could see him getting slightly more blocks and steals. I think he was around 2 stocks last season. I can see the playmaking.
1.8 last year. So that, I think I predicted 2.5. So that would be a significant jump even from the jump that we saw last year. Real quick, it was 2 in the playoffs, and he did play 34 minutes a game in the playoffs, though, too. But as we all know, Isaiah Stewart was not available for the majority of that series.
Yeah. I can see his playmaking being a little bit more efficient. Maybe the assists are a tick higher. He was at 2.7 assists last season. So I could see, him creeping a little bit closer to 3 assists and 1.5 turnovers, which he kind of flirted with last year, the 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio is a big, I think you take that any day of the week. But I agree overall in that I think a lot of his improvement is just more so technique and, just defensive stuff. He could continue to hone his skills on offense. He could, add a jumper or more of a post hook or whatever it may be. But he's kind of in the perfect role on offense already, which is just him thriving as a lob threat and a secondary playmaker. And it's just tough to see. I agree with you. It's just tough to see where he's getting those extra shot attempts and those extra looks outside of what's already been there for him. And he's going to continue to feast, and his field goal percentage is going to continue to be crazy. But there's only so much more you can kind of get out of that type of role. So
yeah, no, that's a great point. It really is. It may be not even as much about the minutes as much as did he expand his individual game to hitting short roll floaters or like you said, the little hook or something like that? Because if he did it, then it's really going to be game to game basis. There's going to be games where teams are going to say, hey, we're taking away the lob, and he may get, 8 points on offensive boards, and that's it. And then there may be a game where they're, slow tagging on the weak side, and now the lob pass from Cade is a little bit more there, and that's a game he goes for 16. So I do think that's a great point, because if all of a sudden he's hitting short roll floaters and some stuff like that, this may jump a little bit more. And West has our average at 11.2 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 2.5 stocks. Wes had him just under 10 points a game. His logic was more minutes for Stu, blaming Ausar. That meaning Ausar needs to play with Stu as opposed to Duren. Got you. Okay. So, and I think that's an important thing to remember because Isaiah Stewart played 72 games. He was available for 72 games last year. That's a guy you're going to play 20 minutes when he's available, O2. So how do you get Jalen Duren consistently 30 minutes when those guys don't play together? And so I just think it's hard to see the minutes going up. And again, a great point from you on the, the ways he might be able to score is important. All right. I think these next two are probably the most fun in terms of, I think we could be vastly different here. And it's just the guys that I think really you want to see jumps. The next three guys, two of the next three guys, you really want to see that. That's a huge part. Jaden Ivey. Everybody knows, only played 30 games last year, averaged 17.5 points on 46, 41, 73, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 turnovers. Jaden Ivey in year 2, the year before, averaged 15 points. The year before that, 16. So for his career, he is at 16 points per game on 43, 35, 75, playing just under 30 minutes a night. I have Jaden Ivey making the jump. And I've just it's got to be this year. If it's going to be, I have Jaden Ivey at 19 points per game, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 1 steal, and a half of a block. Calling my shot here that he's going to take a step forward. This team needs a guy that's close to 20 points per game. This is the year he has to show that he has it, or that he just straight up doesn't. I'll talk about some more of the other things, but where are you at on Jaden Ivey, O2?
Pretty similar as you. Not as many points. I'm about 18 points, which is really just kind of rounding up from the 17.6 he had last season. 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 1.5 stocks, 46% overall, 38% from 3. And I was tempted to dial it up a little bit more because, again, I mentioned all the shots vacated by Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. And J.I. is going to absorb some of that. And because of that, I can see his 3-point attempts going up a little bit higher as well, which is why I have his percentage dipping a little bit, but still 38% from 3 on mid to high volume. You're pretty happy with that still. I just see some other guys on the roster, still having significant enough roles on offense that, and especially on a team led by a guy in Cade Cunningham who's going to flirt with 25 points and, 10 assists probably every season. The wealth's just going to be spread around and he's going to dominate the ball. And, I'm just curious on a team with these other guys who are going to have roles, just how much more of the pie can really go to J.I. compared to where it's already at. So I could see him taking a little bit more of a bigger role compared to last season, but I don't know if it's going to be significantly bigger. And I just mean from a role standpoint and not his actual play.
Yeah, my thing was I wanted him at 20 points per game. Like I said, I think calling your shot on Jaden Ivey is saying that he's going to average 20 this year. Because if J.I. averages 20 a game this year, there's a real argument that can be good enough for the number 2 guy on your team. I looked at Eastern Conference and Western Conference finalists. The average, I think it was the last 10 years, the 4 teams that made it to the conference finals. Omari, you want to guess what's the average points per game? So this was the last 10 years, the average of the top scorer for the 4 finalists, and the 2 in the Eastern Conference, the 2 in the Western Conference. So the best teams in the NBA, what do you think the average points per game are for the leading scorer on those teams over the last 10 years?
I would guess 27.
Yeah, it's 25.8 is the average. The median is 25.9. The minimum and maximum is there's some real outliers. So same thing, the 40 best teams in terms of making conference finals over the last 10 years. You want to guess what the number 2 scorer was on average for those teams? The number 2 scorer on those teams?
21.
20.8.
Okay.
If you go just the last, I think this one is just the last 5 years, it's 21.3.
In my mind, I just literally was I think Jalen Williams averaged 21 points a game last season. Sure. So I just kind of went off of that.
And for what it's worth, the 3rd leading scorer, the average was 16 points per game. And again, I have the medians, the max, the mins, the outlier teams, all of that. My point here is I've wondered, if J.I. gets to 20 points per game, is that enough to consider him to truly be the number 2 option on a team that makes the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think the fact we've seen Cade Cunningham be the 25, 26 point per game guy and know that 20 points per game is enough for the number 2 guy, I would say yes. Now, there's always context to it. You can't just say, oh, he averaged 20 a game, he's it. But I think that's why I kind of look at that 20 points per game for J.I. this year as like the benchmark. Because if he's at 17 again, they may have to go like, hey, this isn't going to end up being good enough. But if he's at 19 and a half, if he's at 20, and I put in here, Omari, I think I see an uptick in 3-point attempts per game for him. I think you mentioned that as well, right? You see him shooting more this year?
Yeah, I see him taking more. Like, somebody's got to take him. He showed last year that he can. I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't just that should become a bigger part of his game.
Yeah, so I have him at 6 per game. I think he took 5.1 last year. And I think, like you, that's why I would have his 3-point percentage come down a little bit to 38%. I want to talk about the assists. So Jaden Ivey, throughout his 3 years, he averaged 5.2 assists his rookie year. If people remember, that was the year that Cade got hurt. It was J.I.'s rookie year, then 3.8, then 4. Where did you end up with him at assists per game? Because I kept him at 4, even if I think he's going to play some more minutes. Again, because I think we're going to see more playmaking from Ausar Thompson, potentially Ron Holland, Karis LeVert.
Yeah, I also had him at 4 assists, and I could see his playmaking becoming more efficient, similar to Duren, where maybe you get a little bit closer to 4 assists and 2 turnovers. I think he was around 3 turnovers a game last season. So if you could cut down the turnovers, that would be great. But I think a lot of the playmaking outside of Cade will be by committee. They're going to have a lot of pushing the ball in transition. Like you said, Ausar, can handle playmaking responsibilities. Duren can handle playmaking responsibilities. I just don't know how many more assists there are going to be left for J.I. to average once you take into account everybody. And that's kind of where he's been anyway, around 4 assists for his minute load. So that just feels like a pretty safe prediction.
YouTube user says Cade and or Ivy need to get much better finishing at the rim in order for the offense to be efficient. I agree. I'll tell you the other sneaky one. Ausar Thompson's finishing numbers in non-dunks isn't extremely efficient either. So across the board, it's something that Pistons fans should be looking for this year with some of the star players on the team. Beastly Arrow asks, random question, are we sure that Ivy is the fastest player on the team? I would say he has the first step. I would say Ausar, like if they got in a race, like if you said, hey, start on the inline and we're going to race to the other inline, especially without a basketball, I assume Ausar wins that race. But I do think Ivy still has the fastest first step. What do you think, O2?
Yeah, it's tough because they just move a little bit differently. Like Ausar, like it never seems like he ever runs like full sprint, but sometimes like he'll just kind of track a play across the entire floor, and it seems like he just kind of hops across the floor in 4 steps, like a guy who's like Giannis size, not his size. So like his speed is deceptive. So yeah, if you're talking like a full sprint race, like it might be pretty close. I'm still going to lean toward J.I. just because of the first step, but like Ausar sneaky fast. Like that's one I would definitely like to see.
There's not a whole lot of guys that will start out of screen in transition and then end up making the play at the backboard. And Ausar does that. And I need to first give our JI predictions as a group. Our Pistons Pulse line, 19 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.5 stocks. Wes had him at 20 points per game, which leads us into Ausar Thompson, who last season averaged 10 points a game on 54, 22, 5 rebounds, just over 2 assists, just under 2.5 stocks, just under 1.5 turnovers in 22.5 minutes. Ausar Thompson, for me, 14 points per game, 3.5 assists, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, 1 block. That's 3 stocks per game. 55-30, a jump up to 30% from 3, 70% from the free throw line. Where are you at, O2?
So Ausar was tough because like just the minutes per game, are going to go up from 22.5, which even just reading that, like that just sounds so absurdly low, even though we saw how it progressed over the course of the season. It's like his average never creeped above 23. So because of that, like you naturally want to add a lot more points. But I also contrast that with just what they're going to need him to do from a role standpoint. And like he's going to score the ball, but I don't think he's going to be asked to, score or be a go-to guy in any sense. I still think his shot diet will end up being pretty similar, even if the minutes does go up. So I have him at 11 points, 6.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. So that's 3 full stocks per game, 55% overall, and then 29% from 3. Still on low volume, but a little bit of an improvement. He was probably the toughest one for me to project. Like 6.5 rebounds could be too low. 11 points could be too low. Like, honestly, 3 stocks could be too low if he's playing like 30 minutes a game instead of 22. Yeah, I struggled with him the most because it was just difficult for me to dial his points up to 13 or 14 and not make the Pistons like this historically prolific offense. So that one may age poorly. I really don't know, but that's kind of where I landed. 11 points, 6.5.
So it looks to me like Ausar, and my guess is Cade. And it's not going to be a wide gap, but my guess is those are the 2 guys that are going to be 5 or 6 point difference in terms of me being higher, you being lower, and you giving those points to the veterans, which I don't think is great. Like, I think my thing with Ausar was just like, he averaged 10 last year in 22.5 minutes. Like, he's going to play like 28 this year, right? And then, I don't know, maybe he doesn't. And in the playoffs, he got to the free throw line all the time. Even though the points per game didn't jump a ton, he got to the free throw line 6 times a game. This is a team that seemed like just played faster throughout the year. And I assume they come back next year and play at that same speed from the start of the year. The offensive rebounding, him forcing transition off his, forcing turnovers. So I understand where you're at, O2. I just feel like he's a guy that's going to, cut and finish, offensive rebound and finish, transition and finish. It's like, how easily does he get 8 or 10 points? And then do they run some stuff through him this season? Even in the half court, do they run some actions? Again, for his video breakdown over on the Substack, I specifically chose a game where Cade was out and you saw them use Ausar as the focal point of the offense and run some interesting things with him. I'm not saying they're going to do that a lot, but I do wonder if there's some more designed actions coming out of a timeout, coming out of halftime, stuff like that. And, you talk about Jalen Duren adding stuff to his game. What if Ausar comes back with a little post game where he jumps higher than everybody else and shoots a little hook, or they use him more in ball screen and roll situations? So I thought that 2 or 3 more points per game was reasonable for Ausar.
I guess my last thought on that is that I think about Ausar almost how I think about a guy like Rajon Rondo, where like he does everything and also exerts so much energy on defense.
That's fair.
That
yeah.
Is he capable of scoring more? Like we saw Rondo score like 40 points in the playoffs, and and even though he couldn't shoot, like he had games where he just got it going, and nobody could really stay in front of him. But he never went out with that expectation, and a lot of his impact, came from defense. It came from his playmaking. It came from other aspects, even though he could score a little bit more. So I think we'll see Ausar have nights where he scores 25, maybe even 30. He may have shot, nights where the shots go on, and he'll have nights, like you said, where like he's just creating havoc and, they can't keep him out of the paint. I also think there will be nights where he has 5 assists, 4 steals, maybe 8 points, but he made an impact everywhere else. And I just don't know if he's going to be, I can see him having more high scoring games. I just don't know if it's going to be every single night. I can see it just kind of being sporadic based on game flow.
That's fair. And to be clear, I put him as a all defensive guy. Like, I think he's going to be very much in that conversation. For anybody that's interested, over on Game Theory, we did a top 25 defenders in the NBA. I'm sure we're getting screamed at right now a lot about that one, but Ausar did make that list. So if you want to check that out, go listen to episode 2 is whenever we talk about Ausar. We do talk about Isaiah Stewart a little bit at the start of episode 1. Spoiler, he did not make the top 25, but he was mentioned and talked about. So our Pistons Pulse line for Ausar Thompson, 12.3 points per game, just under 7 rebounds. I wonder if that's where we end up all being short, is him averaging more rebounds per game than that. 3.5 assists, 3 stocks. Wes said I had him at 12 points and I'm all in for the 3 stocks. Wes said I'm praying for 8 rebounds per game out of him. I do wonder if the rebounds per game is where we all end up being. I wonder if that's where we end up being a little bit short. Here's another really good point. There will be nights where Ausar has much less impact due to foul trouble. That's true. The one thing I will say, elite defenders, especially when they get the reputation of being elite defenders, seem to get a better whistle. And I think Ausar is going to be very close to, hey, this is one of the best defenders in the NBA, and we're going to quickly start seeing him get that type of whistle on the defensive end of the floor. But we have a few players left to go, including Cade Cunningham, Isaiah Stewart, and the young Ron Holland. We'll start with the face of the franchise, Cade Cunningham, right after this short break.
All right, we are back with segment 3, and we're going to lead off with, our last few players. Cade Cunningham will be up next. Bryce, I'll let you lead off, coming off of his breakout All-Star, All-NBA season. Where do you have Cade Cunningham landing next season?
Cade Cunningham, Detroit Piston All-Star, Detroit Piston All-NBA third team, snubbed, should have been second team, and 7th in MVP voting with a season of 26 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, a steal, just under a block on 47, 36, 85. I kind of had forgotten how ridiculous his season was until I went back and read the numbers. And here's the funny thing, Omari. I went higher. 27 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block for the face of the franchise. And I think what Cade Cunningham does this year is solidifies himself as a perennial All-NBA level player, as an MVP conversation level player. I don't want to say a lot of guys have like a single All-NBA season, but there's probably some that you could find out there. I think what Cade shows this year is that no matter what, every year, regardless of injuries from other players, who's eligible, who's not, he's in the running in all NBA conversation and MVP conversations. A stat line of 27, 9, 6, 1, and 1 would truly be a historic season in terms of having 1 steal and 1 block along with those other numbers. So as much as I'm calling the shot with Jaden Ivey, maybe even Ausar Thompson, I am very much calling my shot with Cade Cunningham, that he not only replicates last year, but he actually builds on it just a little bit.
So this may be a cause for some debate. I have Cade taking a step forward in several ways next season, but I actually predicted his points per game dipping a little bit, and I'll explain why. But for my overall stat line for Cade, I have him at 24 points, 10.5 assists.
Okay, let's go.
7 rebounds, 2 stocks, 48% overall, 37% from 3. Yeah, I think his scoring goes down a little bit. I think his playmaking goes up. The reason for that is because Cade Cunningham was 4th in the NBA in shot attempts per game last season. It was Shea, LaMelo, Tyrese Maxey, Cade, and then Luka, and then Anthony Edwards. So he's taking a lot of shots. I don't think his shots per game go up. I think it's probably going to go down, especially if guys like J.I., guys like Ausar, guys like Ron, who we'll talk about here soon, take a step forward. And I think that'll correlate with Cade just playmaking a little bit more. And honestly, that's really just it. I looked at, who led the league in shots last season. Shea led the league at 21.8, which was just 1 more shot per game than Cade, which was 20. If Cade's efficiency, if he still stays the same and his efficiency goes up, let's say he shoots 37, 38% from 3, then that's one thing. But my prediction is that his shots per game dips a little bit. And because of that, he'll still be really efficient, but it'll just be a trade-off between his playmaking and his overall scoring.
So here's the thing, O2. In general, who I think Cade Cunningham is in his heart of hearts, I agree with you. I've been saying since he was drafted that I thought that Cade Cunningham would definitely be the best player on a championship team, but he may not be the leading scorer. Because I thought in his heart of hearts and what made him special was his all-around game. That he would be like a 23-point per game guy that averaged 10 assists, 7 rebounds, was above average on defense, the steals, the blocks, all of that. So in general, I agree with you. I think where we differ is I think we're 1 year away from that version of Cade Cunningham. I think we get 1 more year of do-it-all helios. I mean, it's not heliocentric, but he's scoring, he's creating, he's doing everything. And then whether it ends up J.I., whether it's Ron a year from now, whether it's a free agent or a trade addition a year from now, then I think we get the step back year in terms of points per game. I love that you brought the points per game down, though, and brought the assists up. That is beautiful stuff. What did you have? I stopped listening after 10.5 assists because I was so happy. What did you have for rebounds and stocks for him?
Yeah, I had him at 7 rebounds, so the rebounds go up a little bit. I had him at 2 stocks, so you could divide that however you want between steals and blocks. It'll probably be pretty even, honestly. And yeah, 48% overall. He shot, I think, 47 last year, so a little bit higher. And then 37% from 3, which he was around 35, 36 last year. So fewer shot attempts, but he's a little bit more efficient.
I agree with that. I think my biggest thing with the points is, and I don't disagree with you that even maybe the attempts go down. I got to believe he's going to get to the free throw line more at some point in his career. And I'm hoping that's this year.
That's a good point, too. I talk about shot attempts, but some of that could also come from free throws, which Shea, yeah, I mean, he's averaging whatever he averaged last year, like 33, because he's getting to the line so much. So, yeah.
Or if Cade's 3-point volume goes up or he has a really good percentage here, something like that. So our Pistons Pulse line for Cade ends up at 26.3 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, just under 10 assists. I'm going to round all the way up on that, 10 assists per game, and 2 stocks. Wes had him at 28 points per game, and Wes says free throw attempts go up, and he believes Cade loves getting buckets. So maybe a little differing opinions there for me and Wes on like who Cade is in his heart. At the end of the day, I don't think it matters. I think we all know that he's really good. It's just a little bit of a nuanced thing of, what do you see him and what do you think Cade sees himself as? I will say this. I think a couple of the biggest things I'm looking at, can we get the turnovers under 4 per game, Omari? I do think that's something I would love to see. They got up to 4.4 during the regular season and over 5 in the playoffs. And can we see him be that above average defender? Whether he's closer to your points and assists or my points and assists or Wes's points and assists, any of that is going to be a major positive. He's driving force of offense. Can he bring the turnovers down while doing it? And can he be that two-way impact that we saw a lot of last season? Because if he's a better than neutral defender with the stocks and then what he does offensively, again, that's a perennial all NBA player in this league O2.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about that. He was extremely productive in all areas last season. And I think we all agree that the productivity is going to be to the same extent next season. I mean, he's going into year 5. I thought last year was the first year that he really began to just kind of put together all of the different ways he can impact the game. And yeah, I mean, like I just said, he can only get better. So it'll definitely be fun to see what that looks like.
Do you think is there any chance his minutes go down? He averaged 35 minutes a game. My initial thought was like, man, maybe the minutes go down. But then whenever I looked it up, 35 is pretty consistent with the best players in the league. So I talked myself out of his minutes going down. So did you consider that at all, O2, that maybe he doesn't play 35 minutes a game?
Yeah, I did consider that. And I still think he probably hovers around 35 because it's like you said, you look at what all the stars of the league are playing. And I mean, they're all cracking at least 34 minutes. So I just don't know how many more minutes you're going to trim off of that for Cade. Like maybe you trim 1 minute off, but I don't think he's dipping down to like 33 or anything like that.
Agreed. All right. Next up, Isaiah Stewart. This one will be fun. I think we all understand the impact of Isaiah Stewart. Again, Sam and I both had him just outside our top 25. I think I could solidly say we considered Isaiah Stewart a top 30 defender in the NBA, not in terms of just bigs or something like that. And one reason was the minutes per game. We did factor in he is only playing 20 minutes per game, but I think it just speaks, and that list is littered with really, really good defenders. So Isaiah Stewart has consistently proven his defensive impact and how good he is. But when you look at the box score, that impact doesn't necessarily show up as much. He averaged 6 points, 5.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, half a steal, 1.5 blocks, 20 minutes a game. My stats prediction for Isaiah Stewart, 6 points, 6 rebounds, 1.5 blocks. I think we all know who Isaiah Stewart is. I hope and think that most Pistons fans appreciate him now and what he brings to this team and how important he is. But I don't think all of a sudden we're going to see a difference in the box score numbers.
Yeah, I had the exact same prediction, which essentially is what he averaged last year. 6 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.5 blocks. He absolutely maximized his role last season. Maybe they find a way to carve out a few more minutes. And if he does end up spending some time at the 4, and I guess that's the swing factor. Like if you're going against a team like Milwaukee or Cleveland, which obviously you're going to play those teams a total of 8 times. So, you're probably going to need some size up front. And I'm curious if, after seeing just how much he thrived up to 5 last season, if that maybe gives you some leeway as far as, well, maybe we could play him, 5-10 minutes after 4 here and there, depending on matchup, because you don't want to have to put Ausar or Ron Holland on Giannis or, be caught doing something like that. So that's for me the swing factor as far as, does he stay at 6 points or maybe he could get up to 8 if he is playing a few more minutes. He's taking a couple more threes, stuff like that. But otherwise, I agree. Like, I think we've seen what he is in that role, and that's probably not going to shift too much just from a pure minute standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that would sway, that's a good point. There are certain matchups where maybe he could play some minutes at the 4 and his minutes go up. The other thing is if like all of a sudden we saw the 3-point jumper come back, right? I mean, obviously that was a big talking point last year. It was one of my biggest nitpicks of last season, whether it was Stu, whether it was JB, Trajan, whoever's vision it was for him to no longer shoot threes was a nitpick of mine. It's not a huge thing. I hated to see the amount of time invested into it. It looked like it was at very least progressing, and then to completely eliminate it was frustrating. If that doesn't come back, I'm not counting on it. I think we're all probably in line here. Our Pistons Pulse line has him at 6.3 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.5 blocks. Wes had him at 7 points per game. YouTube user asks, Omari, is Stu's knee good? Any updates?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add as far as the specifics of the injury, but everything I've heard is that he's expected to be completely good for camp. So
okay. Very good. Last player. Actually, this one could be really interesting. There might be some variance on this one. So, Ron Holland. I think this is a sneaky one that I think is important for the future of the Pistons, because we talk about the upside of a Jaden Ivey, the upside of an Ausar Thompson, of a Jalen Duren. I do think you want to see real growth from Ron Holland in year 2. Right? If he's back at what he did last year, 6.5 points, just under 3 rebounds and assists, even if he plays 20 minutes and that goes up to 7 or something, you may not be really counting on a huge major jump from him moving forward. So I didn't have a huge jump, but I had enough of a jump for him where you could go like, okay, here's the first step, and then we're going to take another step the next year. I had Ron Holland at 10 points a game, 1.5 assists, 4 rebounds on 47, 33, 80. Where did you end up with the second year Detroit Piston?
We are not that far apart. I had him at 9 points, 4 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.5 stocks, 49% overall, 33 from 3. I didn't do free throw percentage, but somewhere between 75 and 80 if I had to ballpark it. But moderate leap forward, accounting obviously for his minutes going up from 15 to maybe in the range of 20. I think we'll see his scoring be a bit more confident, especially getting downhill. And if he can knock down a couple of threes, then that's only going to add to it.
Yeah. I think for me, him and Ivy are the players where the jump in scoring is probably the biggest thing I'm looking at with them. Obviously, J.I. on the defensive end as well. But those are the kind of the guys I'm like, okay, what are they going to show this year playing off of Cade Cunningham, theoretically with some other ball handlers and floor spacers? What do they show scoring wise where you can start to project their role moving forward? Does J.I. show enough that you can think he could be the number 2 option? Or do you see a number 3 option or a 6 man? Does Ron Holland show number 3 option potential, or is there not that much of a growth? So these two guys specifically for me, it really is about their points per game and really not even that, but just their scoring ability that they can show this team. And you mentioned it as well. I think there could be a bigger jump if the minutes per game go up as well. So we end up at 9.3 points per game, 4 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.5 stocks. Wes had Ron Holland at 9 points per game as well. So not too far off 0-2. I think the biggest things were I had Cade and who else? J.I., Ausar. No, that's it. Cade and Ausar a little bit higher in points per game. And where you didn't have those points, you threw those into the veterans a little bit more balanced.
Specifically Duncan Robinson and Tobias Harris. And yeah, I still think Duncan is the guy that's like a year from now, we came back and he averaged like 14 or 15 just because of how many threes he got up. I'm just curious to see where that one lands, because Bees did average 16 points a game last season. So that's a lot of points per game that's going to be going to other players.
So Wes said, I ended up at 117 points, 0-2, 116, Wes at 116.5. The Pistons I think their top 9 last year, I did it at the very end of the year, averaged 112.2. As a team last year, they averaged 115.5 and were 12th in the NBA in scoring. So I don't think we're crazy off here. I think that would be projecting probably a jump into the top 10 in points per game. Yeah, which if these guys are all healthy and it comes together, together and all of that. So a couple quick questions here. Pistons fan says, how much of the Pistons improvement over the course of the season do you attribute to Ausar and how much to Dennis Schroeder? I will say my biggest attribution to the season improvement was just like, hey, this is a new coach and we're getting familiar with each other. We're getting familiar with a certain process and we're getting familiar with trusting that process. And then it starts turning into wins and then it starts to snowball. So, I mean, yes, individual players made jumps and were important. Obviously, Ausar coming back was important. But to be honest, I attribute a lot to just like JB, Trajan, and just the culture that was built and the infrastructure that was built by everybody, including the players.
I think Ausar, I would credit a good amount of it to Ausar. I think as far as the team really being able to dial into its defensive identity, I think you need good point of attack defense. You need a good defensive backbone. They had some of it with Stu. And then when you added Ausar to that, I think you kind of saw that identity click into place a little bit more. And obviously Ausar got better as the year went on, as his minutes picked up and whatnot. And as we saw in the playoffs, he's capable of checking guys like Jalen Brunson, which is immensely valuable. I think Schroeder was very helpful as well. But I guess the difference for me is that Schroeder was kind of coming in to replace like what you were getting from J.I. And I think Ausar just kind of provided an entirely unique and different dynamic. So I don't know how much I would attribute to Ausar, but I do think that was a pretty big part of it.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say is I had somebody DM me today. They said that, they said, I love the pod, keep up the good work, which we always appreciate those comments and whenever people reach out. But this person said, also think about the upward growth that there may be under this coaching staff and this new regime as you go from year 1 to year 2. I thought it was a great point by this person. I'm not saying their name because I'm not sure if they're comfortable with me mentioning it on the pod, but I appreciated them reaching out. I thought it was a great point in terms of like knowing the system. And now you're going into year 2 where you can build off of all of those things. So I think it'll be really good. Last one, YouTube user said, Bryce, would you try to get Omax on this roster? I honestly don't think he fits the roster great or has enough great opportunity, but he seems like a Piston to me. Listen, I love Omax. I liked him in that draft. I do think that when you talk about like true foreman, that is what Omax is. And he plays extremely hard, has athleticism, like all of those things. I mean, I guess the idea here would be you bring him in and just let him and Bobby Klintman fight it out for that roster spot. But to your point, I don't know that you're guaranteeing that either of those guys are good enough to truly play the backup 4 minutes. So in regards to that, it could be a little bit weird. I mean, if you could get him on a 2-way, I know the Pistons 2-ways are full, but would love that. O2, any thoughts on Olivier Maxence Prosper, got waived by the Dallas Mavericks to make room for Dante Exum, I believe.
Those strong thoughts. He's kind of like one of the young fringe guys that you hope could develop into something. And if you want to take a flyer on a guy, I think it's worthwhile, but I don't think you bring him in with any sort of expectation. So for a team with one roster spot, it's just, do you want to go that route? Do you want to leave it open? Going into the season, what's the best use of it? So,
yep, that's a huge part of the equation as well. All right, O2, it was great to have you back. Listen, I had a lot of fun with Coach Jones. I had a lot of fun with Andrew and Alex. You guys should go listen to those. The episode with Coach Jones is literally just about basketball. A lot of really good insights. If you're raising a young athlete, if you want to understand NIL, like all of that stuff. The Slam and Jam crew was good. We talked Western Conference. I completely screwed up the trivia game, but we laughed a lot and had a good time. So that was fun. But of course, it was great to have O2 back, kind of get the band back together, get on a little bit more of a normal routine here. I'm glad he's back from vacation. We can keep this thing rolling forward. Like I say, we're not too far off from training camps and preseason games and all of that. So glad you're back, O2. I will be with Pistons Jacked on Wednesday night. So make sure you guys check that out whenever you get a chance. Otherwise, O2, take it away, my guy.
Yeah, great to be back. Excited to talk a lot of hoops coming up to training camp in a few weeks. And with that, I'll close this out. Big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, and big shout out to West Davenport, as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.